Just want to take a quick minute to say that I'm going to be doing a couple extra things that aren't on this lift. Like I'm going to replace the upper control arms, I'm going to be replacing the tie rods, and just a couple various little things like that. So if you're doing this rough country list, you may see that I'm doing some things that aren't in the instructions. Just follow the rough country instructions. You'll see me do those as well. But I just want to let everybody know that. And also, when it comes to doing stuff on one side, I'm not going to show the other side. You should be doing both sides at the same time, basically. So if I do show the other side, that means that it's separate from this side. But when I get into like doing the crossbars and stuff, I'll make sure to record both sides. But for stuff like taking out the struts and that way it'll make the video a little bit shorter. So the first thing I'm going to do is go around and pretty much just hit up everything that I'm going to be taking off with a little bit of WD-40. I'm not going to record all that, but of course hit up all your nuts and stuff. One thing that they don't say is to remove this fender liner, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I think you'll find that you'll thank me later. There's wiring up on top of the strut nuts that are on here that's really difficult to deal with. So it's easier to take this fender liner out. It's not so much a problem on the other side, but I'll do the other side anyway just to have easier access up there, and I'm not rubbing my knuckles and stuff along this edge. So again, I think you'll find that you'll thank me later for this tip. See what I'm talking about. See all those wires up there? So this makes it a little bit easier to deal with all that. I'll just go ahead and lift these wiring harnesses off. Before I disconnect this tie rod, I'm going to loosen this nut because I'm replacing these tie rods. If you're doing just the rough country lift, you don't need to do this. You're just going to remove the bolt on the tie rod. You can see how loose those tie rods are, so good idea to replace them. Now you want to, when you hang your caliper, you want to think about where you're hanging it because you want to have access to some things still. So just keep that in mind. One thing I want to point out real quick, make sure you're keeping track of your hardware. Some of it you're going to reuse, some of it's going to be replaced by hardware that's included with the kit. So make sure that you're laying out all your nuts and bolts and all that exactly how you can remember where they are and where they go. These sway bar links can be rather difficult to remove sometimes, and it's always a good idea to have them have new ones ready just in case you have to cut them off. And that's going to be really hot after that, so be careful. Now, these sway bar bolts, they can be very delicate, so good idea to feel around up top and get it soaked down with a little bit of penetrating lubricant before you try to pull it out. So these are just 10mm bolts, and I'm not really sure if the nut up top spins or not. I'll let you know in a sec. I always break them free by hand first, because you don't want to use a gun on these right away and snap them, of course. So break them free first. If you can. And as you can see, this one's stuck. So more than likely I'm going to end up breaking this one. I'll go back to that one. See if I can get these two loose first. More than likely I'm going to end up breaking these. We'll see how this goes. I really feel like these are going to break. Okay, so far I've got this side loosening up. Lots of WD-40. Loosen it a little bit and then push it back up. WD-40. Loosen it a bit more again. Push it back up. WD-40. Keep doing that. It's coming out. I'm now going to start working on this side. So far I'm getting pretty lucky here. So, according to Rough Country right now, they want you to remove the 6 bolts holding in the axle and remove the axle. However, once you get these 6 bolts off, you can't bring the axle down to slide it out because of the strut bolts. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these for now, and I'll remove the axle when I remove the steering knuckle. So, in case you're wondering what I did, all I did was remove my swivel adapter and gave it a little more torque. But they say to remove the axle now. However, if you try to bring it down, it hits the strut. So you really can't remove it right now. And these, I believe these are aftermarket struts, and the nuts, the bolts are going upwards. So you might not run into this position if you've got the original struts on. So you might be able to pull that axle out now, but I can't. So what I'm gonna do is pull it out when I pull the knuckle, I guess. That's where I could probably pull these strut nuts right now. It probably wouldn't hurt. I'm gonna try that actually. I'm gonna pull one of them right now. So if I drop that down, let's see if that does it. It still doesn't give me the room I need though. Let me see if I pull this cap off. Even then I still don't have room. So yeah, you really can't pull these axles out right now. I'm not sure why they're saying to do that. So it just, for me it doesn't work. It might for you. So I'm gonna pull the steering knuckle first. Alright, so let me explain real quick. On the other side, even after I got the knuckle completely loose, I still couldn't get this out because of these struts. I do believe these are aftermarket struts. Hopefully you don't have to deal with this, but what I ended up having to do, I had to get the knuckle completely loose, and then leave the nut on the lower ball joint loosely, and then pull out the strut. That way I could take the axle shaft out and then pull the knuckles. So I'll show you how I do that just in case you're running across this too. Now I'll take that nut all the way off because you want it to catch the upper arm when it pops up. You're going to strike the knuckle and break this upper arm loose. See how that popped up? Now leave that nut on there because we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. However, on the bottom, you're not always going to know when it's loose because all the pressure, the arm is holding it up. So what I sometimes do, I'll get this nut almost all the way off and then I'll take this one off so the knuckle will fall when I actually break it loose. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So now I'll put that one on and just, that way it'll catch the knuckle when the knuckle falls. And now I'll go ahead and take off the top. Make sure you hold this arm down while you're taking the bolt off because it can pop up, see? So you want to make sure you're holding the nut down. And actually, now that I have that loose, I can pull this strut out real quick. And I'll go ahead and pop this knuckle out, or this axle out real quick. Okay, sorry if you didn't see all that very well. When I break the lower ball joint loose, I like to hit the back of it on the knuckle. This one can be rather difficult, and because of the angle it's at, I'm going to go ahead and put this back on. But again, you don't always know when it's loose because the upper arm is going to be holding it on. So stop every now and then and give it a shake and see if it's loose or not. So when you push down on it, the knuckle will go down if it's loose. I think I might have, can't tell. definitely not. This one's really on there, and the other side took me like 3 hits and I had it loose. There it goes. Wow. Yeah. Then you gotta lift up on the knuckle while you pull that nut. Knuckle's pretty heavy, so be ready for it. At this point in time, rough country has you remove the lower knuckle, or lower arm, but I'm also going to be removing the upper arm and the inner tie rod at this time. It just makes sense for me to take care of them now. Now, if you are doing the arms and stuff, for the upper arms, I do recommend making marks on your alignment. So, I got that mark there, and then I'm also going to make a mark on where the arm sits, so I can reorientate it when I put it in. So basically, due to the amounts of struggles that I've had already and a few things slowing me down, I probably won't be listing how the wrench sizes, socket sizes, torque specs, all that is listed in the rough country manual. So it's just way too much for me to try to keep up with doing all this work too. Alright, so if you're doing the upper arms and the tie rods as well, at this point you should be looking like this. If you're not, then you should still have your upper arms and your tie rods in, but everything else should be out, and you should be looking the same on the other side as well. So here's the passenger side, and you can see I got all that stuff out too. So now we're gonna, if you're doing this on the ground, the next couple steps are going to be rather hard. I do recommend doing this lift, doing this lift on a lift, because of the crossbars that go on here. It is doable on the ground, but the next few steps are much easier accomplished with a lift. Okay, so now we're getting ready to drop the front differential, and in order to do that, we need to disconnect the drive shaft back here. So you want to make a mark, like I'll mark this part of the drive shaft, this part of the yoke, and then this part on the actual differential. That way you know exactly where to line everything back up at once you're done. Also known as a prop shaft. That way I just know which way everything is lined up when I go to put that back in. Now I'm going to give you a little tip too. When you remove these U-joints have caps on them. If these caps come off, the little bearings inside are going to go all over the place. You don't want that to happen. So when you pull this out, make sure that you're kind of holding on to the caps so they don't go anywhere. And I've actually seen people wrap the tape around just to kind of make sure that they hold in, but you got to get it out before you wrap the tape around. And then you're going to want something to support this while we do the other work. And these bolts are 11 millimeter. Alright, and then you're going to want something ready to support this. I've got a pull jack ready. Just be real careful of these caps. They don't come off. You don't want these caps to come off. Okay, and we're just going to support that, and then if you want to, which actually wouldn't be a bad idea, you can wrap some tape all the way around this, and that'll hold those caps in place. So you want to be real careful that these don't come off. These ones are pretty on there. I don't think I'll have an issue with them, but it can happen. There's a little electrical wire on the top that you would want to break free from the differential. Yeah, there's one more here too. It's a bit harder to get to. There we go. Okay, so that should that. And then there's a differential breather tube on this side. You want to disconnect that as well. Okay, so wire connector here. See that? It's right up above there. And then there's another one right up on the top there. And then disconnect this hose right here. Okay, so at this point you want to support the differential. Rough Country recommends a 4-jack. I have a little adapter that I'm going to use, but I'm going to pull this bolt first because once I get my adapter set up I won't be able to have access to that. So I'm going to pull that bolt now, and then I'll get my adapter set up. But you want to pull that bolt, and then on the other side there's two more. You've got one there and one there. So as you lower this down, make sure you support it because it's going to hit over here. You have to kind of work it out as you come down with it. I found another wire clip up here. Alright, this is where it might get a little confusing for some of you in the directions. They're requiring that you trim some area on here, so you want to make sure that you have the rough country crossbar, the one that says RC on it, because that's the front one. The RC is going to point to the front. So before you do any trimming at all, go ahead and pre-size this first and see if you can get it in. Because if you can get it in without needing any trimming, then you'll be okay. So I really won't need to trim there because I can get the bolts in there. But if you have a hard time getting this up in there, what you want to do is trim these little edges right here. There's one there and there's one on this side, and it'll be able to slide up in. But I won't need to. I'll be able to work this in. So I'm going to go that route. We'll get this guy in. This is also where it gets confusing for a lot of people. You get a lot of extra hardware with these kits. For the front arm that we're doing, or the front bar that we're doing, we're going to use the 4.5-inch bolts with 2 of these bigger washers and 2 of these lock nuts. Okay, so remember the orientation that you took them out. When you slip them in, they're going to go in this way. Make sure that the RC faces the front of the truck. Okay, so now we're on the driver's side. We've got the front one set in. Don't tighten that down yet. Now we need to work on this rear one, and to do that we need to make room for the differential, and we need to cut here. So by directions, what we're going to do is we're going to measure 3/4 of an inch out from the hole, mark here, do the same on the other side, and then mark that all the way around, and we're going to cut this end off. So let me show you how that's done. Now I'm not going to show all of this, you know, step by step, but you'll should be able to figure out what I'm doing. So we're going to go 3/4 of an inch from the hole here, and it's a good idea to clean up the area. This stuff is flammable, of course. And then I'm just going to make a line that goes along that. And it doesn't have to be picture perfect or anything like that either. And then we're going to do the same on this side. We'll mark a line. So let me show you what I did here. So I've got my line there, and I've got my line here, and now I'm just going to cut this piece off. So it says to use a reciprocating saw. I can't say it for some reason today. Reciprocating saw. Cut that off. I'll probably end up using a grinder. I don't think my Sawzall will do it, but I'll give it a shot. But I'm not going to film this because it's going to take a little bit. But cut this end off, and we'll move on from there. Okay, once you get your piece cut and removed, go ahead and grind that down, and then spray it with some black spray paint so it doesn't rust up. One thing I do want to note while we're doing this stuff is when you're looking through these directions and you're getting confused on the bolts, like the next direction is to install these differential, or the drop brackets. So if you look on the first page where it tells you with everything that comes with it, if you look on there, it says bag 2 has the nuts for the differential, or the nuts and bolts for the driver's side differential drop bracket. So look on here, you see this one's bag 2. There was 4 bags total. That was bag 1. This one's actually another bag 1. This is bag 2, and this is bag 3. So make sure that you're using the right nuts and bolts that they call for as you go along. That's kind of rather important, so I just wanted to give you that tip. One other quick tip that you might get confused with too, they don't tell you exactly which direction these go or anything like that, so very important to watch pictures and keep them in mind how everything gets installed. Like for the driver's side differential drop bracket, you're going to notice that this end piece here actually goes onto the differential, so we know to install this side up, and then with this one, if you see in the picture, you can see that the welds are on that side. So the welds being on that side, you know that this side is going to be installed up. So just little things like that in the pictures will help you. Alright, so I'm going to do the differential drop kit now. I'm going to start on the passenger side and use 2 of the 12mm flange nuts that they include in bag 2. And then again, going by the book, the weld goes to the back of the truck, and this middle piece faces the center of the truck. So leave that a little bit loose for now. Okay, so for the driver's side, you want this notch to be on the bottom. You're going to use 2 of the 35mm. There's only 2 of them in bag 2. They're 1.5 inch bolts or 1 3/4 inch bolts, 35mm, and then 2 of the last 2 12mm flange nuts. So we want to make sure this notch is on the bottom. I don't know why it calls for nuts, because these screw right in. I don't think we're supposed to use the nuts. These screw in. Maybe might have read that wrong about the nuts, because these actually just screw right in, so I don't think we're using nuts. And then again, don't tighten this all the way yet. So according to their directions, neither of these should be torqued down yet. They should be loose, and we need to lift the differential back up into place. I think it's going to be really hard to torque these once the differential's in, but I'm going by their directions, so we'll see how it goes. So I probably won't film me raising the differential, but you want to get it up to those brackets, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got mine up enough to where I can work with it now. You're going to use the factory nuts that you took out of the differential in the first place, or bolts, excuse me, and then you're going to use the last 2 of the 12mm flange nuts that came in bag 2. So for the passenger side, you're going to use the last 2 really big bolts in bag number 2 and 2 washers, and then you're going to use the factory nuts with the built-in washers on them. Let me double double check on which way these go in. I think they're gonna go this way with the nut going on the differential. Hang on. They don't say, but you need these bigger washers on the bottom. So when you install them that way. Alright, so now you're gonna go on both sides, all 8 bolts. So the 4 on the frame and then the 4 on the differential, and you're gonna torque all of those to 65 foot-pounds. I'm not gonna video this because it's gonna take a little bit, and I think the ones that are on the upside are gonna be kind of difficult to torque down. So I'm gonna skip this on video, but get all those bolts down, torque down to 65 foot-pounds. I hope you had as much fun as I did with that. Okay, so before we put in this cross beam, the rear cross beam, I'm gonna go ahead and go through and I'm gonna put that hose back on and the 3 spots with the wire, and then plug the wire back in. Actually, this hose might need to be extended now. Yeah, I'm gonna have to extend this differential hose. I don't see any other way. Isn't that funny? They don't give you an extension for that. So for the differential breather hose, good idea to get a little, hang on, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you can get a pack of these guys, and then just cut yourself a length of hose and you'll splice into it with one of these. So you put this in one end of the hose and then into the other end of the hose that you just cut, and then the other end of the hose goes into the differential breather there. So I just cut a length of hose with that piece, and I'll stick that into the hose that's there, and this end will go into the breather. And then if you can, get as many of these little wire clips in as you can. Not all of them will fit now because it's dropped down a little lower, but I got 2 of them in. The third one won't go back into it, but these 2 are in, so that's enough to hold it in place. So when you go in to install the rear cross member, the one that's going to go across here, they don't show you which way it goes, but it's only obvious. There's a dip in it right there that is obviously built for the differential. Same thing as the front differential. You're going to use the longest bolts in bag 1, 2 washers on the bolts, the 2 bigger nuts, and 2 bigger washers for the other side. And then they're going to go in. These are going to face the rear of the truck as they came out. You can tighten them up a little bit, just not all the way yet. You need it to be loose still. Alright, so now you want to reinstall your lower control arms. I have new ones my client brought, so I will be installing the new control arms. And you want to use the old hardware, the original hardware. And leave it loose for now. You can tighten it up, but you still want it loose. Okay, so it's kind of strange. My client got different struts with this kit than what you may get. At this time, it's telling you to install the spacers on the struts. If you happen to get those, if you're using the original struts, then you would have spacers in your kit. So you would put those spacers onto the struts now as per their directions. But then it seems to totally skip a couple of directions. And in here it's really strange because it goes from number 34, step 34, which is to install the spacers. And then it goes on step 35 and it says something about trimming the tie rod ends as per instructions on the last page and install them to the knuckle. But yeah, I don't see why you would do that right now, especially when we don't even have the hub in the knuckle or anything like that. So I'm not sure what they mean by trim the tie rod ends as per instructions, because I don't see any instructions at all on trimming any tie rod end. So I might end up having to call Rough Country to find out on that. That's a new instruction that I've never seen on their kits before. But there's a few steps here with the knuckles that need to be done. It looks like there's a hole that's got to be drilled on each knuckle as well. And then the brake shield needs to be trimmed a little bit to fit the new knuckle and allow the caliper to be put back on. So the things I'm going to do in the next few steps are kind of on their directions, but also I'm going to be installing the upper arms and the tie rod ends and stuff. So there's a few things that aren't by their directions. I'm going to go off of previous lifts that I've done as well as their directions, and we'll get the rest of this together. Alright, you guys, so I've had some issues on the other side trying to get this stuff in. It's been back and forth. If you read the directions, it tells you one thing, but then 2 steps later it tells you another, so their directions are really confusing. I'm going to start by getting these upper arms in, and then I'll jump back into everything here in just a second. So right now what you want to do at this point in time, when you're get your new knuckles, if you've got new knuckles, you see they don't have the hubs installed, no sensor or anything like that. So what you need to do is take out your hub from the old knuckle. Unless you got a new hub, then you'll put the new hub in the new knuckle, and then also the brake shield. And again, pay attention to the steps that are about 7 steps ahead. It says that you need to cut the brake shield, so make sure you're paying attention to that before you put all this back together. Otherwise you'll have to take it all back apart just to cut the brake shield. So yeah, definitely read ahead on the instructions and make sure you know what you're doing. I'm gonna get these knuckles switched over and then we'll get back to recording. Okay guys, I already did the passenger side on getting the CV shaft and knuckle in. Trying to do it by their directions, I was not able to, so I'm gonna do it my way, and maybe that'll help you guys. I don't know, I'm not sure what else to say. Right now they tell you to put the knuckle in and lock it in and then slide the axle in through and stuff like that. What I found is better to set the knuckle on the lower ball joint and let it hang, and then do the axle, and then we'll put it all together. That's the best way I can figure. This knuckle is really heavy once you have it together, so once you're ready to work with it, be ready. CV shafts. Comes with these spacers too. So this is where it gets rather difficult. Now, I'm going to give a little hint right here. I found the easiest way to get this started is to hold the CV shaft up flush with that, and then get those started, which is really hard to do, and then put the front end of the CV shaft in. As you can see, I've got that one hanging with all that stuff done. I'll show you how I did it on this side. It's the best way I found to do it. They do include bolts for this. So, like I said, they do include bolts, and they do have pre-Loctite on them. And you're gonna find that the shaft doesn't actually sit on it properly until you get it torqued down. So. Okay, so moving on to the sway bar brackets now. Going to use the rest of the hardware in bag one on the 4 bolts, and then you're going to use the 4 lock washers. Put those on first, and then you're going to use all 8 of these. So you're going to put a lock washer on, and then put another washer on. So it'll look like that. And then once you get that through, you put a washer on, and then a nut. So these ones really lock right on this. And doubles, you get using that. Go ahead and take a look at this should be looking like that. Go ahead and do it on both sides there. And just so you guys know, I have been torquing. I'm just doing it off camera. And I'm not listing wrench sizes or torque specs in this video just because I'm running behind on this lift. Alright, so putting the sway bar back in, you're going to use the old hardware. I don't know if you remember how rusty these were. I thought they were going to break when I was getting them out, so I cleaned them up real good. And then you'll use the nuts and washers on them. When aligning your sway bar, you can see the rub marks of where it used to sit. So I just like to line those up. So on doing your drive shaft, make sure you got your marks all on the right side. Okay, it's now calling to install the skid plate and then tighten the crossmember hardware. But I think right now I'm going to go ahead, not the lower ball joints, not the lower control arms, just the hardware up here. So we're going to tighten the two crossmember bolts, top bolts, not the lower joints yet, and then the two crossmember bolts on the top up front too, and then we'll install the skid plate. Don't do the lower arm bolts yet. You don't want to torque these down until you have the vehicle on the ground and the lower arms are at right height. We're just going to do the top four on both cross arms. Okay, so at this time, should pretty much have the front end just about complete. I skipped a few steps here because it was easier for me to deal with the underneath stuff while I had my pole jacks and it up on the jack stand. Now I'm going to lower it down so I can connect the knuckles, and then we're supposed to have to cut the tie rods 3/8 inch off of each end, and then we need to drill a hole into the lower control arm on both sides as well. So that's the reason why I skipped a couple steps here that I'm now going to go back on and do before we do the cutting and drilling part. Alright, I had to regroup a little bit and reorganize all my tools, but at this point you should have everything basically down here torqued down except for the lower control arm bolts, those four. Other than that, you should have the lower struts torqued. You should have the upper bolts on these crossbars torqued. All that stuff, the sway bar, the brackets that we added in, all that stuff should be torqued down at this point in time. The only thing that should not be torqued are the two lower control arms. Okay, so I've trimmed my tie rods 3/8 inch as they recommend, and I went ahead and put a little paint on the end of that so it doesn't rust up or anything. Can't really count threads anymore since I had to cut these, so I'll have to eye align it when I get done. I mean, you're gonna need an alignment job after this anyway, so. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I connect the lower or the upper ball joint here. This is different than Rough Country says, because Rough Country would have already had you put this on by now. But the way they say in their directions, I was unable to get the axle in. So I'm doing this my way. I'll take a jack and raise up the lower control arm to give me the leverage up on that upper ball joint. Now, when doing this, something I do want to note is you're putting a lot of pressure on the lower arm, so you can lift the vehicle off of your lift or jack or whatever you're using. So it's a really good idea to come in the back here and make sure you got the rear end supported, so that way if you do lift up on the front end, you're not going to push the vehicle off your jack or jack stand. So be really careful while doing this. Pay attention to how much weight you're putting up on the, or how much you're lifting up the vehicle from your jack or whatever, jack stands, whatever you're using. Find a good point on the lower control arm, and we're going to lift that up. If you see fluid coming from my jack, don't worry about it. It's coolant. I didn't clean up my jack after the last job. Okay, let me see what I have here. I might bring it up a little more still, but this is kind of, you gotta check where you're at every couple minutes. Go ahead and get that axle started, and then it's good to bust this ball joint loose and get it moving. That way when you put it in, it'll move for you. So I just come off the spring there and push down on the upper arm and just work that ball joint in. I need to bring the lower arm up a little bit more, not quite enough yet. Okay, and then have your upper ball joint nut ready. Push down and get your nut started. That's it. I'll torque these in just a second. And then while I have the pressure of all of this up, it's a good time to torque your upper strut bolts. Okay, so at this time, torque your upper strut bolts, torque your upper ball joint, and torque your lower ball joint. Okay, so when you get to your link here, you're gonna have to eyeball the alignment on this on your tie rod. So what I do is I'll set it in, and then I'll see how straight this is. And actually, that's rather good. So that's really straight. So I think I'm gonna go with that actually. You will need an alignment after this is done anyway, but for now, try to get it as straight as you can. I'm surprised that's as straight as it came out. That's really good. Be nice to the alignment, guys. Don't really over torque this nut. So that actually is really straight. I'm happy with that. And then when you release your jack, let it down slowly. You know, you don't want to just drop it, because you could, again, drop it off your lift, jack stands, jack, whatever you're doing. So just drop your jack down slowly. Alright, so I'm caught back up on steps. Now I have one more step to do before I can move on to the brake lines and stuff like that. But there is a template on the back page here. We need to drill a hole into the lower control arm. So we're going to cut out this template right here, and it's going to go over this hole, and you're going to make a mark for the new hole and then drill out the new hole. Now when you get ready to get all the way through, be careful, because it's going to snag and it's going to make your hand twist, so be careful. It's best to do both sides at the same time so you get them lined up before you start tightening them up. And with the new bushings, these can sometimes be really difficult to get started, because like you see, I don't get enough room on it. So what I'll try. And then you can get that nut on there. Okay. So these sway bar links are supposed to be 47 foot-pounds, but on the other side, when I did that, it was way too tight. So what I'm gonna do is take these down till these bushings are squished a little bit, and then make sure they're tight. So you see how that bushing is squished just a little bit and a little bit there, and this is solid. So I think that's going to be good. They're supposed to be 48 foot-pounds, but like I said, I did it on the other side and it was just way too tight. So I'm going to measure what I have here and on the other side and make sure they match and call it good. As far as those go, those are sitting great. So measuring both sides from the nut up, we've got about 7/8 of an inch on each side, and again, it's tight there. It feels good, so I'm not getting any rattles from it or anything like that. So that's where I'm going to set it at. Again, book says 48 foot-pounds, but there's just no way I was taking it down, and it was way too tight. So that should do the trick, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on it, see how it goes. Okay, basically the last we have to do up here is the brake lines. We're gonna do a little extension on them, and we'll get the brakes back together, and that should pretty much take care of it for the front end. We'll still need to put in the wheel well liners, and then when the wheels are on and the vehicle is lowered to the ground, that's when you torque the lower control arm bolts. But we're almost done with the front here, so we'll just keep on going. Okay, let's see. Brake line is a pain in the butt. You actually have to bend the metal hose, so you need to be really careful when we get to that point. Okay, so the brake line, they give you a bracket, but you literally have to bend this metal hose to get it to fit. Be really careful when you're doing this, because you break this metal line and you're in a world of hurt. Pretty close there. Okay, and then they give you some hardware for it. I'm good with that. That should do the trick. Now, with this bracket, they say you can bend it with a screwdriver, but I've been trying on the other side and I really can't get it to move. So what I might actually end up doing is just cutting it, just to get rid of the bracket part, because otherwise it's, you know, sitting here swinging around. See where that's gonna go, right? So definitely get rid of this bracket one way or another. You can either, according to them, you can take a screwdriver and pry it, but there's two things with that. One is this doesn't move very easily, and two, you're prying against a hose, So when you're getting your screwdriver in there, it'd be really easy to pinch that hose, and you definitely don't want to do that. You don't want to break that hose. So I'll figure out what to do with these. And then they're not very specific on the ABS. What I've done, let me show you how I wired this up. Went ahead and take these clips off because these clips are no longer needed. So I just pry these apart. And this will not fit with the clips, so no point in having them on here. So I'll just take those clips off, and then we're going to run it around the back side. And then up here. And then obviously this clip can't stick in anymore, so it's pretty much just gonna hang there. I'm gonna have to make sure that, you know, the wheel, once the wheels are on and everything, that it's not getting in the way of anything. So it's pretty much just gonna hang here until I can figure out if I can put a zip tie on it right there or not. But that's the best route to go, because if you come around the front, it might get caught up in the wheels, anything like that. So until I can figure out how much play I have here, what I might end up doing is putting a zip tie on it for right here, because, or maybe even go back to this guy. No. So I'll probably end up using a zip tie. But I've got to see how the wheel clearance is first, and then also deal with this bracket here. Besides that, front end's pretty much done at this point in time. Still got to do the CV axle. Alright, before we get started on the rear, I do want to make a tip. Support the front end of the vehicle, because we are going to be lowering the rear differential, so make sure you got the front end supported so it doesn't teeter-totter on you. If you're doing it on jack stands, make sure you got wheel chocks in front of the front wheels. But you're going to set your jack and support that rear differential. You want to be right in the center of that pumpkin, because the differential is going to teeter-totter. And also try to tip forward as you lower it down. So just keep that in mind, and again, make sure you support the front of the vehicle. It saves a big headache. And again, I will only be showing one side. Everything I do on this side, you should also do on the other side. If there's anything that pertains to both sides at the same time, I'll try to make sure I get that on camera. Yeah, so to remove this upper strut bolt, you're going to want either a stubby 21 millimeter, or as I've done here, you can see that I've purposely cut I've showed these in my videos before, but I actually purposely cut a 21 millimeter wrench, so it has a tail on it, and I can lock it back up back behind here on the bolt. And what that'll do is when I put my gun on here, that'll catch the frame and it'll hold the bolt in place while I pull this nut off. If you use something like this, or if you use a stubby, be really careful. If you try to hold it, you don't want to get your fingers caught in there, and trust me on that one. Now keep in mind too, when you have both shocks disconnected, you've pretty much freed up the entire rear axle, so you got to be really careful on what you're doing. And you'll see when I pull this bolt out, the axle is going to jump a little bit. I don't know if you saw that, but it lowered down just a little bit. So be real careful, because right now basically the only thing holding you up is your jack, and a couple other little things, but it can, and when you disconnect the sway bar links too, that's going to make it teeter-totter even more. And keep track of your bolts, of course. Oops, I should put that back up to hold that. I'm going to use that to hold that so I can get this one off. So there's an e-brake mount on the other side that this side doesn't have, so let me show you. So this wire right here, you want to remove this on the passenger side. And this one's going to be kind of hard to video. There's the e-brake line. Here's the mount. The bolt for it is right there. Alright, so now we need to lower the differential and pull the springs out, but they don't tell you that the differential breather hose, see that breather hose there, it's already really tight. So if we lower down the differential, that breather hose is going to have an issue. Sorry, it won't focus. So breather hose goes right there, right on the back side of the differential. Just go ahead and pull the breather hose for now, and then we'll deal with that. Like, we might have to make an extension like we did on the front, but we definitely need to pull that to bring the differential down. Alright, so now you want to bring the differential down as low as you can, and then we'll be pulling at these springs and putting in the new springs. The new springs are probably about twice as long as these ones, so I might end up using spring compressors. That's as far as I can get it. That's barely far enough to get these off. So I'll probably be using spring compressors on the first ones. Make sure you get your mounts, because you'll need to transfer those to the new springs. And do the same thing on the other side. But I'll probably end up using spring compressors when I put the new one in, because there's no way I'm going to get enough room to fit that in there. I'm going to give you a little tip here. Pay attention to which direction your isolator is going. Like, the end of the spring is right here, you see that? And if you've already taken this off and you can't tell, before you clean this up, take a look at the bottom and you can see where it was sitting. So you can realign that, and then you see, and actually somebody already has a couple little white marks there. But you can see where the spring orientation was, and then just go ahead, take a marker and mark that, and that way you know where to line that back up. I went ahead and lifted it up higher because it's easier for me to work with. Now on their directions, kind of odd, they're telling you to install the springs now and then do a couple other things, and then on step 15 it says to remove the track rod on one side, because you got to put in a bracket anyway. But I'm thinking removing the track rod now, or the one side, will give me more play in the differential, so installing the springs might be a little bit easier. So I'm going to attempt that. It's not by Rough Country's directions. They have you actually do the springs, install the sway bar links, and then do the track rod. But I'm going to try it this way because I think it'll give me more room to bring that differential down. Okay, so before I remove this bolt, I'm also going to loosen these off of the frame, so it doesn't pull this line when it pops up. To pull these clips off is rather simple. You just kind of push down on it and then pop the end out. There we go. And then it just pulls off. I'm going to leave this cable hanging so when I pull this bolt, if the track bar pops up, it doesn't pull this cable. This might be a big mistake. It might really help. So I guess we'll find out. This has a lock-in washer on the other side. You see that? So that's going to hit the frame and it'll hold the nut in place for you. And we'll see what happens here. Okay. So that should give me a little more freedom to lower the differential down, I think. So it gives me a little bit more room. Not much, but a little bit. Every bit helps. And I'll show you why. And for most, this difference in sizes on these springs, every little inch you can get helps. And I'm actually going to end up using spring compressors probably. Alright, so I'm going to kind of walk you through this. What I did is after removing that bar on the other side, basically I pulled down the differential as far as it can go. Now be really careful doing that. You see the truck wobbling, right? So you want to make sure that you're not going to drop this thing off the lift or anything like that. But I've got as much clearance as I can get through there. And then to get the other side in, which I will actually walk you through, I did use my spring compressors, which I'll show you in just a minute. But I had my shop neighbor come over and pull down on this side while I worked the spring in. Even with the spring compressors, I still didn't have enough clearance. So I'll pretty much video this whole side so you guys can see how I ended up doing that. The biggest thing is to make sure that you got your isolators in place. That's why it's so important to mark that bottom one, because you can see where the isolators sit on the spring, but you need to have the orientation correct once you get it on the axle. Otherwise you'll end up with a clunk. First thing you want to do is determine the orientation on your spring, because this is going to determine where you want to put your spring compressors, because you've got to have room once you get it up there to get on the bolts on the spring compressors to be able to release them. So with the orientation of this spring, it's going to sit, as far as my marks go, pretty much like that. So I know that this side is up against the brake, the back of the brakes, and then this side is facing inward to the rear axle. So that means that this side and this side are going to be the spots that I want to put the spring compressors on, because they're going to be on either side of the axle and will give me access to the bolt that I need to get to be able to loosen them back up. So I will go on one on each side. So we're going to go one on that side, which will be on this side, on the front side of the differential, and then we'll do one on this side, which will be on the back side of the differential, and then we'll have clearance to be able to get to the bolts that are needed. Now these springs are big and they're really tight, so I kind of had a little bit of an issue with them, but make sure that you're setting your compressors down a little bit, because these are going to go up quite a bit. So if you have these too high up, you're going to hit the bed of the truck rather than the spring going into where it needs to be. So that can cause you a problem too. So your placement of your spring compressors is very important right now. And then we'll just alternate sides, pushing the spring up. And I don't care how long you've been working with these things. Like myself, I've been working with these for 30 years. Never, never, never trust them. alternate sides, because what happens is it turns and it can bite your, see how it took my socket, and my socket won't come out. So I need to start on this side. And I'm going to readjust this just a little bit there. Okay. So by starting on that side, I went too far again. By starting on that side, it kind of bent the spring a little bit that way, so it gives me access to this one. And then you just kind of alternate back and forth. And you can see it's getting real close to the spring again, so I'll stop on there. I'll come on this side. Let's get close. And then also what I try to do is straighten it out before I put it into the truck. See how that's pretty straight, and I've got it pretty close to the original spring. Like I said, I've made a little extra access room by pulling down on the differential, and then if I need to, I'll go get my shop neighbor and have him pull down while I push this in. So we'll give this a shot, see how it goes. I'll try this before I get my shop neighbor out. Actually, it's gonna go easier on this side. So make sure you have your isolator sitting in the right position. And you can see where the spring was sitting before. It's really not that difficult to see. So now, like I said, one compressor is going to be on the outside of the differential and the other is going to be on the inside. So I've almost got enough room to clear this, but I think I'll get my shop neighbor to help me get just that little extra oomph there. So it's good to have a friend to pull down on this side if you can. Okay, so here comes my shop neighbor, that's Alan. He's gonna help me pull down on this while I get that little extra 1/4 inch of room that I need. All right. Okay, we're good. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Now, before I start disconnecting these spring compressors, we want to make sure we get the isolator right here. So, again, your orientation is very important when you're doing this. I can't get that isolator to move. Okay, so get your marks lined up and then line the spring up to where it should be. And that's very important, because if you don't get the orientation right, you're going to end up with clunks. And then just make sure that you're lined up top. And then we'll go ahead and start pulling these off. So again, rotate from one side to the other. So let's start over here, take it down a little bit. And then I'll come on this side. Same thing, take it down a little bit. And watch the top, make sure that it's actually going into the mount. And that's the springs. And we'll move on to the rest. Okay, since I skipped doing the sway bar links and went directly to removing that rod, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll jack this up with my pole jacks a little bit. I'll get the sway bar links and extenders on, and then we'll do the extension for that bar, and then the shock extensions and stuff. So now I'm gonna go back into rough country's procedures, but I really think getting those springs in and getting more clearance on the differential is a lot easier by removing that track bar first, whereas they have you do it afterwards. So okay, they don't show you on these sway bar links, but it's gonna sit this way, and then you're gonna use the old hardware for the top, and they give you new hardware for the bottom. So alright, so this is where the fun begins. I've got to drill some holes, it looks like. So this is going to sit in here, and then there's a little sleeve that goes in the middle of it. So you want to make sure you get that in there too. And then you're going to use old hardware. Find a hole. There we go. And then this washer. And it says not to completely tighten it this time because we have to drill a couple holes. Now this is stupid because the 2 holes I have to drill are over here. Why did we do the sway bar? Rough country. Why? So we have to drill 2 holes here. So I'm going to disconnect the sway bar and pull that back down so I can make my drills. This is the kind of crap I'm talking about with these lift kit installations. It's just really, really stupid. So, and then when we do get that in, getting the track bar in there, it's going to be fun too. But so we need to drill 2 holes right there. Mark and drill. So I'm going to remove the sway bar again so I can make my drills. Okay, so I moved the sway bar link and get the sway bar down. I have marked my holes, but I'm going to go ahead and punch them while this is here so I can get them rather centered. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and remove that and drill some holes. Alright, that was a pain, but I got my 2 holes drilled. There and there. I think before I bolt this in, I'm actually gonna tuck that arm in there too. Maybe. I think I might try that. Can't really put washers on them, can you? So here's my issue, you guys. Somehow I'm supposed to get nuts and washers on the back side of these, but obviously they're not gonna fit, right? And they're too close to each other. So let me see here. I put 1 washer on and it's already at the bottom of this hole. So if I put a bolt in and a washer on that one, the washers are going to touch. So I guess I'm going to have to do this without washers because they're going to touch. So we'll do one at a time. Let's start with the bottom one and then go up to the top one, I guess. I'm not really sure here. This is... Okay, so I'm going to have to tighten down one at a time, but the problem is when I get to the top one, I don't think I'll be able to get a ratchet on it. And I'm gonna have to torque these separately too. Okay, so, well, at least it went flat, so when I go to put the other one in. Alright, so obviously I'm gonna have a huge issue trying to do this. I don't have any room there, and I hardly have any room in the back. I'm looking for it. Okay. You can see my socket was getting stuck between them. Alright, it's in though. That's what matters, right? Can't torque this one yet, or the bar doesn't move because it pinches it together. Okay, these are the shock extensions. I don't know if you can see that, but you're going to put this piece on the inside of it. And then make sure you come over this brake line too. So it just sits right in there. And then they give you a nut and bolt for it. Okay, and then for this one, you're going to use the original shock bolts on the bottom, and you're going to use their new hardware for the new shock bolts. These are original for there. Now we need to get all the wheel wells back on, lower the vehicle down, get all the wheel wells back on, and then we'll get the vehicle on the ground, put the tires and wheels on, get it on the ground, and then torque the lower control arms. Okay, so I got the wheel wells back on, all 4 of them. I'm attempting to get his new wheel and tire set on, but I think his lug holes are too short. I cannot get them to fit, so I don't think they're going to match up, even though they're universal. These ones measure out to be about 5.5 inch across. These ones measure out to be about 4.5 inch across. So I'm almost done with this video, and unfortunately it's more than likely going to have to be with the original tires, but I'll still get a after picture for you guys, and then hopefully maybe he'll bring it back when he gets his new wheel and tire package, and I can get another picture then or something. But that's where I'm at. Other than that, it's done and ready to go. Everything is good to go. I need to check wheel clearance when he does get his new wheel and tire package, but that's where I'm at now, and I will finish this video up in just a couple minutes with some kind of wheels on here. Yeah, we got some temporary wheels and tires on here. The original wheels didn't fit anymore. They were rubbing up against the tie rods, so that didn't work. So luckily he had some 22-inch rims at home, and we've got those on temporarily till he can get those fixed with the other company. One thing I do want to mention is don't forget to go under now and torque down your lower control arms, because you haven't torqued those yet. So once you have the vehicle on the ground is when you torque those. So there's 2 bolts on each lower control arm. You've got one up front and one in the rear, one up front and then one behind it. So make sure you get those torqued down, and then after you do that, start up the vehicle, roll it back and forth a couple times, and then you want to check your wheel clearance. So you're going to want to turn the wheels one way, turn the wheels the other way. As you can see, I've got a little bit of rubbing going on right here, so I made a mark there and there, and I'll take a little Dremel and just cut a little notch out for it. And then when he gets his new tires, because they're going to be more knobby than these, so when he gets his new tires, we'll have to check again and see where it rubs at. But everything is awesome. Came out really good. It's doing great. Right now, get you a after picture here. So, and then we'll try to do the before and after pictures. But there it is.